Oh boy. This here is another viewer's broken gaming PC. This one apparently powers on and even posts, but throws a USB overcurrent code. Now we've seen this issue before in the playlist. If I recall, the last time this occurred in a rig, the Type-C cable running from the front panel of the case was bad. Either there were some wires crossed inside of the insulation, or the actual physical connector, the female side, was inconsistent. It's actually very nice that motherboards throw these kinds of codes. I'm just showing you now what that would look like. This is not the owner's rig here, but this is what I expect we'll see when we do power it on, and it typically does indicate that there's some sort of short somewhere around USB devices or USB headers, so maybe at the back of the motherboard or maybe around the front panel, again, of the case in question. So I don't want to get too ahead of myself, but it does sound, at least on the surface, like this should be an easy fix. Famous last words. I hope you will stay with me.
Are you sitting on a gaming PC without an activated copy of Windows? Forget $100+ retail keys. Instead, snag an OEM Windows 10 or 11 key for a fraction of the price to unlock the full potential of the OS. They'll also remove those pesky activation watermarks. Click the links below to get started today and easily activate with your key under the Activation tab within Windows Settings. And be sure to use our special offer code SKGS for a sweet discount on a variety of options, including Windows 10 and 11, Pro and Home, and more.
Now, before we dive deep, I've got to say, with this particular build, wow, it is beautiful. Probably one of the cleanest we've ever seen in this playlist. There is an RTX 5080 from MSI in here using a 360mm AIO for cooling. So just an absolute beast of a unit. There's also a 360mm AIO for the CPU, and that's a 14900K, a Z790 motherboard. So all around top of the line system. This is actually his first build ever, his first DIY project. So doesn't leave the best taste in the mouth when you run into issues right after spending this amount of money to do something. I think his previous PC was a pre-built, so he was a bit upset and worried that something catastrophic went wrong with assembly. I can tell you though that if you're seeing a USB overcurrent issue, it's probably, again, something fairly simple. I know I keep preloading this. I'm really hoping that it doesn't, stab me in the back later, but I'm convinced that the solution is going to be pretty straightforward. Oh, and by the way, you're watching Fix or Flop, where we fix viewers' PCs for free in and around the Orlando, Florida area. If you have a broken system, you'd like a chance to have it fixed for free in this playlist, be sure to click the link in the description tied to our Fix or Flop submission form. You can submit photos, tell us about your issue, and we'll try to get to you as soon as possible. Let's see what happens when we fire this thing up. Power button near the top, I think. There we go. All right, so at first glance, it seems all right. LEDs for all the fans are working. This is all Corsair Link stuff, which is actually very expensive. Right now, we're just looking for a picture out. I don't think that's gonna happen though. No signal to our monitor. Gonna message the seller very quickly. It's important that we're on the same page here. From what I was told and from what we can see in this description submitted by the owner on our Fix or Flop forum, I was under the impression the system consistently posted only with the USB overcurrent error. You can see here, the debug LED we are stuck on is for DRAM. It's the amber one, the CPU one is red, I believe VGA is white, and the boot LED should be green. A few more minutes in, still a black screen. In fact, the system has automatically reset a few times to no avail. Thankfully, the owner is super fast about responding. That's always very helpful. That additional insight can help us narrow down the issue even sooner. So he says that he either sees this post screen here, where he's on basically the vendor splash page for the motherboard, and he's able to enter the BIOS, but that is it. He does have the USB overcurrent error when this occurs, or he sees what we're seeing here, where he just has a lit DRAM LED and no picture out. He says, I was able to get to BIOS one time with one stick of RAM. So that's not good. Maybe we have two different issues here. I don't think anything related to DRAM could cause a USB overcurrent. What is it with multiple issues this season? Let's see what happens if I reset the system via the case. It looks like it's just defaulting back to the amber DRAM LED. I don't think in this current state we're gonna get any further than this. Also, looking at the DIMMs, they all look to be seated properly. And since he stated that he was able to get into the BIOS with only one stick connected and one random slot, he doesn't recall which, it's likely we either have an issue with the 14900K communicating with the memory, so maybe a dead memory controller or a failing one, or we have one or more bad sticks of RAM. And yet another message from the owner. This one wasn't pleasant to read at all. He says, also, when I did get to the BIOS that one time, he tried updating it, but he wasn't sure if the update completed or not, which could mean we are dealing with a bricked motherboard. If this doesn't support dual BIOS or anything of the sort, we're gonna have to do some very fancy stuff to flash the correct BIOS, or at least revert it back to stock. Not good. I've got power cut. I'm gonna go ahead and remove every single DIMM in the rig, and we're just gonna start with one known working from my own stash. Physically, at least, these look to be okay. I've got them all four squished together here, and from this perspective, you can see on the top sides of each PCB, the SMDs that stack near the golden fingers. These can often become dislodged if any or all of them are inserted, let's say, incorrectly into the DRAM slots on the motherboard, and these all look to be intact. I don't see anything sticking out here. Doesn't look like anything is missing. With our working DIMM installed, I also hope to be able to roll out a bad BIOS flash if in fact, say, power was cut to the machine during an update. We could have a bricked board, in which case we won't get a post, but we could also not be getting a post from, say, one or more defective DIMMs. This is the problem with having multiple issues running at the same time. We're essentially removing one culprit only for the next culprit to show itself. So with this installed, if we still get no post, it's very likely we have a bad BIOS flash. I have special tooling that I could use to try to salvage the board, but I'm not totally confident using it yet. It's tricky. You have to kind of like sideload a BIOS without using the motherboard's UI, and I'm not the greatest at that kind of stuff. Software stuff isn't really my forte. You know what? This is actually a DDR5 board. What am I thinking? I need a different stick of RAM. Here we go. That's more like it. A bit overkill for troubleshooting, but it works. This is much better. I'm gonna do this in slot A2 for starters. I have tried every single slot on the motherboard with our working stick, and, well, okay, that didn't last very long. It's doing this because it sees the USB overcurrent and shuts off, which is actually a good thing. But we were getting a post consistently with that DRAM DIMM in every single slot, which tells me that he probably has a defective module, maybe more than one. So you can see it stays on the DRAM LED for just a bit. Eventually, it will cycle over to the white VGA light, where it's just checking the graphics card display out, making sure everything's good on that front. And then it will pivot over to the green boot LED. But of course, that's where our next problem begins with the USB overcurrent. So this message makes me want to start disconnecting anything USB related. But I first want to look at the back of this motherboard here, make sure that we don't have any shorts internally in any of these USB ports. I've seen that throw USB overcurrent codes time and time again. I will say though, all of these look good. Yeah, nothing sticking out back here. Likewise with the front panel, the two type A ports are clean, nothing crossed, nothing shorting. Same goes for type C. It's a little harder to see with type C because it's just it's a much smaller, more fine connector, but it looks good at least on the port side. So let's try then disconnecting USB cables. I'm gonna do type C, also gonna do the 3.0 connector. Also gonna disconnect these two USB 2.0 cables. I can also say, yes, these are USB 2.0 headers and not COM ports, for example. Sometimes when USB cables are plugged into those, you get weird, funky behaviors with motherboards. With those major cables disconnected, will it now post without that overcurrent error? That is the big question. If we still see the error, then we perhaps have something more dangerous, more sensitive, definitely more time consuming to hone in on. Oh, would you look at that? No USB overcurrent. All right, so it's either one of our USB 2.0 cables, the Type C cable, or the USB 3.0 cable. Both of those are from the case. It's likely still posting in safe mode because it's been reset so many times, not a big deal. We could probably hop into the BIOS now and start configuring things, but of course this doesn't actually solve our problem yet because we don't know which cable is to blame. The system isn't resetting automatically though, because that overcurrent error is gone. We're gonna work backwards first by reconnecting the two USB cables. I think the odds of one of these being bad is less likely. Oh, I can't see anything down here. Hey, and would you look at that? Still no overcurrent. Actually threw us straight into the BIOS this time around since all we effectively did was reset the system. This is good news. Let's try reconnecting USB 3.0 next. My bet from the beginning has been on this Type C cable being bad, maybe an internal short somewhere under the insulation, maybe on, let's say, the front panel board side from the case. We'll check that as well. But this is a much more fine cable. There are many smaller wires running through it, and so just as a consequence, there are more chances for things to go wrong. Yep, would you look at that? Back in the BIOS yet again. Yeah, that's pretty much a slam dunk USB Type-C cable issue. I wonder if it's the cable itself though, or if it's something near the front panel board. Sometimes they have a small circuit board that connects and integrates all of the different front I/O peripherals, etc., different connectors. So let's see if we can find the exact cause, or if we just need to roll out the cable entirely. Hey, so Future Greg here. I just realized while editing this scene that I completely forgot to check the Type-C connector on the motherboard side. I was immediately jumping to the conclusion that the case Type-C connector or cable was bad, but we could have ruled out the motherboard connector very easily. In fact, we did a very similar thing in a previous Fix or Flop episode, one that I referenced earlier in this video. We would have taken a case from my closet that has a known working Type-C front panel connector and connected that to the owner's motherboard. If we no longer saw the overcurrent error, that would tell us that the owner's case was to blame. If we still saw the USB overcurrent error, then we would know that the motherboard was to blame because we could replicate the issue with two different Type-C connectors, one of which we know for sure works in other platforms. So yeah, sorry about that. I have no idea why I missed the mark on that one. I just jumped into the Type-C cable being the culprit, but we cannot say for sure. And you'll see throughout this video, I for some reason honed in on the case being the problem. Either way though, I don't think it would have changed my approach. You'll see later in this video, the fact that a single connector would have been bad on an expensive motherboard maybe wouldn't have warranted a replacement. It depends on the owner, but the fact that these are all new components means that an RMA would have been, I would hope at least, very straightforward. And again, like you'll hear me say later, if the owner has any issues with the RMA process for any of these brands, I have contacts with pretty much all of them. I'll make sure that everything is taken care of. It's a shame that it sometimes has to come to that, but I'm obviously trying to get the owner's system back up and running as quickly as possible, and I'd rather them just RMA something or request a replacement ahead of time so that their system can be down for as little amount of time as possible. Oh, should also mention, this is a sight to behold, because if we didn't have a correct BIOS update, it looks like this version is 18.05. I'll just throw up on screen if that's a relatively recent BIOS version, or if maybe it's an older one and the update that the owner tried didn't go through. The good thing is though, the board isn't bricked because it's consistently loading into the BIOS. There's no Windows partition installed yet on any of his drives because he hasn't had a chance to do that since the rig has been essentially bricked from the start. Now, at least on this side of the cable, things look fine. The actual connector, the thing that slides into the motherboard, looks fine. The golden fingers are all intact, nothing crossed, nothing shorting. Remove the front I/O cover board and get a better angle of what's here. But see, the problem is the Type-C cable itself is completely masked in this like plastic housing. It's going to require like a full-on replacement, which shouldn't be too difficult, especially given the fact that this case was only purchased a couple of months ago. Yeah, you can see there, even if I was able to narrow down whether the connector or the cable was bad, there's no way to go about swapping that out without replacing the entire front panel board, which isn't expensive by any means and wouldn't be a laborious task. We might even be able to get ASUS to send one. The good thing at least is this isn't a totally debilitating issue. Once the Type-C cable is disconnected from the motherboard, things work fine. So I'll try to get the company to send the owner that board to swap out on his own if he wants. We could just leave the cable disconnected and run things without issue. He just won't have access to that Type-C port. Probably not a big deal in the grand scheme of things anyway, and there aren't many cases out there that support dual 360mm AIOs. So I'm not inclined to swap the case out for him because I think this was a very intentional choice here. It actually fits his components very nicely. Moving on then, we do have the issue of these 4 DIMMs. I suppose all we can do now is start swapping them in one by one to see which is giving us the error. Oh, did we strike it rich on the first DIMM? So far we are stuck on the amber DRAM LED, just like before, and this is the first one. So I'm gonna try this in other slots just to be sure, but we might have gotten lucky with the first stick. Aha, yep, sure enough, this board hates this DIMM in any slot. You can see it's actually cycling between CPU and debug LED lights, and that's because the system keeps trying to reset itself in hopes that it fixes the issue. It is not, so getting ready to write this one off. Oh, and by the way, it's in a different slot this time around. In fact, a different channel, slot B1. We do get a post with the second DIMM in any slot, and again, no USB overcurrent. Separate issues, remember? And again, it's only throwing us in safe mode in the interim because I keep resetting the system to try different modules. DIMM 3 also works no problem in any slot, as does DIMM 4. In fact, all three of the known working DIMMs are connected at this point, and we still get a post. By the way, the numbers are just arbitrary based on the order in which they've been tested. So this first one is the defective one. Again, physically it looks fine. There's nothing else I can really do here though. This is probably gonna be up for a return or a refund, maybe a replacement, since it is still under warranty. It doesn't make a ton of sense to replace the entire kit, seeing as though 3 still work. You can run with 3 sticks. It is a bit weird, but you could always just deal with 3 in the interim while the 4th is being replaced, and that would just be a simple swap in. It's not gonna require any heavy system disassembly or anything. Just pop the new one in once it arrives. But for now, I think that he's gonna be okay with 3. I just don't, again, wanna start swapping things and replacing things given the age of these. I mean, I suppose I could handle the swap on my end if I wanted to reach out to Corsair directly and they would send one no problem, but I don't have a 4-DIMM kit on hand that I could even replace with this one. So I'd rather him keep the 3, and if he has any issues with Corsair's RMA process, I can reach out to my contact directly and they'll hook him up. Ooh, this actually looks like 2 separate 16 gig kits of DDR5, 5200 megatransfers per second. You can see the timings next to that. Still though, same issue. I'd have to replace 2 DIMMs, and I don't have any Corsair Vengeance, like low profile modules on hand. I'd have to get that ordered from Corsair. So I'm gonna make sure that that's taken care of for the owner through my rep if push comes to shove. But the good thing is we haven't really had to replace anything else in the rig. The super expensive stuff seems to be functioning just fine. The CPU core temps also look great in the BIOS. We should be seeing somewhere around mid-30s. That's normal for an AIO once the loop has equalized, and his 2 M.2s are detected. The owner did ask that if we managed to get the system up and running in this video, that we also install Windows for him. Again, he hasn't had a chance to do that yet because he's been dealing with issues since the start of this build. So we'll take care of that for him quickly here. And we'll also use this as a chance to verify that there are no other issues with the rig. If we can install Windows and load into it without problems, I'd say he's A-okay. We'll just connect this to the back of his motherboard, give the rig a quick reset, and let's watch here. We should load by default into the USB since we don't have any Windows partition on any other drive. Should see some spinny wheels. There it is, all right. Now it doesn't look like it's detecting his M.2s, which is a bit of a shame. If we refresh, you can see nothing else pops up. So we might need to either load drivers or maybe toggle, let's say CSM or something. I don't like doing that, but we don't really have a choice here. But no matter what I try or toggle in the BIOS, we still can't get either drive to show up apart from the USB that's connected. Of course, we don't want to install on that. So what is going on? Got Intel RST drivers on a separate thumb drive. I want to see, I think it's going to be this one here. Let's see if this helps us search for those disks. This is a shot in the dark. I don't really know what I'm doing at this point. Oh yeah, there they are. Okay, I've only had to do this once or twice before. That worked out great. So now we have the 3.6 terabyte drive and the 1.8. He has specified which one he wants. I'll double check that in our text messages, and we'll get the OS taken care of. And with that install now wrapped up, let's try for one final post, and this time operating system boot up as well. We're gonna power on. We're gonna closely monitor this screen here. Should very quickly cycle through things now. Yep, so it's already booting. And what is it doing now? Oh, it doesn't see a keyboard detected. I kind of hate when it does that. It's just too picky. Like, I just want to load into Windows. I know you don't see a keyboard yet. Okay, good. That's a good sign. Should be very fast. There's nothing on the operating system, really nothing on the drive except for the operating system. And there we go. That's the startup screen. Of course, it's trying to force an internet connection in order to install some drivers to begin, but that is a clean slate. This is exactly where you would be if you had bought a pre-assembled rig, and that's, I think, what the owner was looking for as well, which is why he wanted us to install Windows if we had the time. So that is largely mission accomplished. I know that it seems like the solutions to both of these problems was just to disconnect the problems, and that's not really a quote-unquote fix, but again, I don't really want to tamper with stuff that is essentially essentially brand new, I can coordinate with the owner very closely with my own reps from both Asus and Corsair to make sure that these smaller issues are fixed. Also, don't want to hold the system myself in this office here and not allow the owner to use the rig. He spent really good money on this, and so he can use it as is, no problem. Missing that one Type-C header is not going to be a big deal, and missing one stick of DDR5 is not going to be a big deal. He still has 24 in here. It is unorthodox, but he can game perfectly fine, especially with this RTX 4080 in here, so he can wait for those components to arrive in the meantime while gaming intensively. So a couple different issues with this system. Again, more than one can be complicated. Thankfully, these were not. We isolated the defective DRAM module. That was pretty much a piece of cake, just plug and play, or rather plug and check. And as for the defective cable, pretty much the same approach. Disconnect all of them and then reconnect them one by one until the problem arises. The one you most recently connected when the problem pops back up is likely the culprit, and this Type-C cable, unfortunately, has had its fair share of issues, especially when it comes to cases. These are, again, pretty complex. I know they don't look it, but there are so many small wires inside of this insulation. Any of those could get crossed and shorted. The connectors themselves, the ports, can also become rather problematic if drives are, let's say, inserted incorrectly, or if they're just straight up manufactured wrong. The good thing is, like I said, in the meantime, while we wait for those smaller components to arrive, the system is fully usable as is, ready for any number of games and other programs that the owner desires. Thank you so much for watching this one. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give us a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you have not already. And yeah, maybe stick around for the next video. I would appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching again. My name's Greg. Thanks for learning with me.